Hey everyone, and welcome to this Ask Daniel episode. Hope you're doing really well. Sorry I got off a little late here. But that said, I think this will be a really valuable episode. It is a lot of variation, a lot of different type of questions today. So with that said, let's jump right in here. And as always, nothing here's medical advice, just me sharing thoughts and questions that thoughts on questions that I hope will be helpful to anyone out there tuning in. So with that said, we will actually start with something that came in very recently, I think just a few hours ago. And this is from Riley, who just discovered the channel and posted a couple of really encouraging and helpful comments, including this one. This is a comment on Talking Insomnia number 16. Thank you. That was, a comment on a previous reply from myself. I've looked into possibly doing one of the available apps. I downloaded Sleepedy, but honestly avoided it for a while. Now I looked into BedTyme because I really like your approach and thoughtfulness. What would you say to someone curious to try your app? When is a good time to pull the trigger, so to speak? And when is it better to watch the videos, read the books, and self-pace? Thanks. So Riley, I want to say welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for this comment. I said to Riley, I'm going to talk about this tonight because I think it's important. And also I can sneak in a little bit of marketing as well. So here's my thinking. If you, and I mean Riley or anybody else out there, if you don't have too much trouble sleeping and you have the sense that if you just understand what's going on, and a little bit of support, etc., then I think you can just watch these videos here. I really think, honestly, I think that for a lot of people, let me just say a lot of people out there, you don't need much more than just browsing, particularly my more recent. I would say start with the more recent episodes and work backwards, because the other day I was looking at some of my earlier episodes and I realized my teaching has improved a lot. So again, if you're somebody who don't have too much trouble sleeping and you can, yourself, you don't need too much accountability, you probably don't need that much like emotional support, etc., then I'll say just watch these videos here and ask questions in the comments sections or send me emails, and I think you'll do really well. Brian, by the way, who was a guest last week, yes, he had bought my book, but I think he was actually doing really well before that, just by listening in and asking. I don't think he'd actually asked so many comments, but just by tuning in here, I think he was doing really well. So that's that one. Now, for somebody who maybe doesn't have the time to browse the episodes and kind of like tease out the best pieces of information by just kind of like browsing, then I think a book is great. If you don't have too much trouble sleeping, you just need the information and you can do the work kind of in a self-directed way, a book is great. I think The Effortless Sleep Method by Sasha Stevens, it's a little bit like kind of tough love, but I think it's a fantastic book. I recommend it to everyone. And of course, my own book, Set It and Forget It, which I think has the added benefit of you can ask me questions at any point, and it's all the information is contextualized here. So that's a great option. Now, for someone who senses that, I think in addition to learning and education in a structured way, which is a book, I also need somebody to ask questions, somebody that can ask questions anytime, somebody that really can contextualize on a daily basis, that can give me more kind of emotional support and accountability, make sure I do what I'm supposed to do, etc., then I think BedTyme is a great option. Sleepedy, by the way, is a product of two of my good friends, Rahul Shivkumar and Andreas Maestad. And in fact, just a little behind the scenes stuff here, Rahul, who is one of the two founders, he reached out to me, I want to say about a year ago, and asked a lot of good questions about BedTyme. And I actually connected him with Andreas, and that's how Sleepedy eventually came to be. So I have a part in that story as well. So yeah, I hope that helped, Riley. And let me know if you have any questions. And again, welcome to the channel. So with that said, let us move along here and talk about another question. Where does it start? It actually starts here. Got to yellow mark it. This is from my namesake, Daniel, who has completed very recently, actually, a CBTi course and has some questions about like where to go forward from now. So let's read this. Daniel says, my insomnia first occurred back in 2016, where I would fall asleep very fast as there was no self-monitoring, as usual at around 10:30 p.m., but would wake up around 3:30 a.m. Yes, 5 hours of sleep at that time sounded really bad to me, and it's something I strive for now. From this point on, the insomnia would go away and then to come back later and disappear again, and so on. But then I had really put in my head that I had difficulty sleeping, so I started taking some zopiclone here and there, which was prescribed by my GP, but never got addicted to it as I knew the risks. Things started getting worse when I needed to take 10 milligrams of melatonin to sleep every day until I stopped having any effects of things, and things got worse. And there was me again trying to find another sleep aid that would actually work for my case. I was then recommended to CBTi by my GP, which I did, an online course called Sleepio, free on England's healthcare service, just before I started the CBTi course. The Sleepio course wasn't good as there was no interaction, had a very short sleep window, 5 hours only, and 50 minutes stimulus control, and made me more anxious, and I developed a terrible sleep onset insomnia. After that, I joined the CBTi course. I completed the course last week. I started really bad and made very good progress after around 4 weeks into the course, where I started sleeping soundly throughout my sleep window, 5.5 hours, without waking up and with no sleep aid at all, falling asleep within 10 minutes and sometimes even 5 minutes. However, that uncertainty and small anxiety at night was always there. It's like I will never stop thinking about sleep in my life going forward, even when I'm sleeping well. Once you have been exposed to it, then that's it. However, unfortunately, I cannot deal yet very well with the setbacks. During the course, I had some milder setbacks, which discouraged me, but I got on track again fairly quickly. However, after finishing the course, I overslept one night, overshooting my sleep window by about 1 hour. And the other night, I had 0 minutes of sleep. The sleepless night scared me to hell, as I never really had a totally sleepless night. And the night after, I developed a bedtime panic, saw myself awake again to only manage to sleep for 3 hours, and today also got 3 hours. It's like I am right back to square one, and I can never get rid of this fear. I struggle to find wakefulness enjoyable or acceptable because the next day my emotions get really, really shaken. The negative thoughts and anxiety takes over and is really painful. And I have to cope with all this on a very demanding job on a big international company where I have a high responsibilities, etc. So it's all been a very tough ride with lots of bad emotions. I just want to be what I have once been in the past and sleep normally. So Daniel, I want to thank you for reaching out. And, I think there's so many elements of this email that so many here, it resonates with so many. We have the intermittent insomnia to begin with, where your desire for sleep, I call it, that kind of like, one a little bit of like wondering why you can't sleep, what's going on. You're kind of like your safety center has put sleep on the radar. It's a little bit worried about it, but it kind of it goes on and on. It goes like on and off. It's not really a big problem. And then something triggers it to become a more full-blown issue. And that desire for sleep, I call it the desire for sleep, really grows. You're starting to really try to figure out why you can't sleep. You're experimenting with things, etc. And we hear this so common story of like you started something like zopiclone, and then that really solved the problem. Tried melatonin, and then you went into this phase of like looking for the next thing, the external thing that'll fix your sleep. But here's the thing: what I really want to highlight is this. Maybe two things, but what I really want to highlight is this. When you, Daniel, when you started this CBTi course, you got good advice. You started doing better. Actually, what happened was that you were becoming less worried. You had support, you had education, and you were trying less. In other words, like your desire for sleep, that wanting, pursuing, hoping, begging, praying, obsessing about sleep, that desire was lowered. And thanks to that, you were starting to sleep better. The desire never went down to 0, which is where you want to be. And I believe fully you can get there. And when the desire is 0, that is like you don't think about sleep at all, and that's where you want to be. Your desire went down a lot. You didn't try as much. You were doing better, but the desire was still there a little bit. And then when you completed the course, then you were still at this vulnerable state. You overslept one day, which is actually not a problem at all. It is not a problem, except when you are vulnerable, when you start thinking, oh my gosh, I overslept. I'm screwed. This is not going to work. It's going to come back. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and you have trouble sleeping again. So here's like the two things I want to really bring up here is number one, the reason you did better was, again, your desire was lowered, but that happened because you learned. It was educational. You understood things. And although your confidence can be shaken, which it has been, you still have that foundation of learning. So you're not back to square one. It seems like it, it feels like it, but remember all the things you've learned. They are there with you. Nobody can take that away from you. You have that within you forever. So just apply, like think about what you learned, not how you feel and think and etc. Just think about what you learned, that education you have within you, and you will get back on track. And I want to say, if you, like, one of the messages here is that if you have completed a course, and that's for Daniel or anybody else, and you did better, and you end the course, and then you kind of like have this step, what feels like a step backwards, just think of it as like, it is natural. Your course ended. So of course you're going to be a little bit vulnerable, worried, etc. And one of the questions that I had was like, should I start your app, BedTyme? No, I don't think so now. I think for now, just take a deep breath. Think about what you learned. Try to lower your desire as hard as it is. Try to like lower that desire. And the way to ultimately do that, and I say this to you, Daniel, because I think you've already gotten to a point where you can start thinking these terms. Think about it this way. When you lower desire, when you try less, when you're thinking less about sleep, when you, etc., what you're actually doing, another word of expressing that is you are becoming more willing to have insomnia. You're not fighting or resisting as much. And that's where the key is. Hard as it is, if you now go to a place where you're like, okay, despite my high, my responsibilities at work, despite everything else, I'm going to be more willing to have insomnia because that's what helped me before. I'm going to be willing to have it. If it comes my way, it's okay. I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to fight it. If I have a totally sleepless night again, I will be fine. I was fine the other day, etc. If you are going in that direction, you will get to that point where you sleep well for the rest of your life. So I think for now, just think about this. And I would say, don't jump into another program or another course or an app or anything right now. Just think about this and let some time pass. And if you, in a couple of weeks, feel like, you know what, I still want to work with you, Daniel, I'm here. I'm always here. But I think for now, take that deep breath, and I think you'll do really well. In fact, I didn't include this here. Daniel actually wrote back to me like 2 days later and said, you know what, I slept well that night and I feel better. So hang in there, Daniel, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Okay, so with that said, we will move forward to our next question here. And this is actually a, not really a question, it's just like more for commentary here. This is from Tracy, and this was an email that had the title, CNN, the rich have one more thing you don't, better sleep. Let's read this. Hi, Daniel. I always ease my mind by remembering what you say, but literally every day there's a news article about lack of sleep and its consequences, health risks and all that. If you're correct, meaning that insomnia, short sleep doesn't have any health consequences, negative health consequences, or at least there's no evidence of that, why does the ASA, the American Sleep Association, keep their usual info? How is it that they get their data to soundly produce info like this? I personally know I function fine on 4 or 5 hours sleep, but I'm only getting 0 to 2 a night, and I exercise daily and have a set wake up and bedtime. I don't personally go looking for these articles, but they appear in my daily news. Do you think they will ever change their line of thought or what they come up with? Does ASA work with pharmaceuticals or something? So it's a scare tactic. Get people to say, oh my God, I don't sleep enough. I better get on meds. Sorry, just annoyed. Thanks, Tracy. This is one of my kind of, I don't know, my favorite thing to rant about. Let me put it that way. And I was going to like show you my book. I don't have it on me right here. It's called Why We Don't Sleep. I think for most of you, absolutely don't need to buy that. It's very, very simply a short book, but it's still the best I could do to try to refute all the nonsense that is out there. But what I talk about in that book is essentially this, that if you have trouble sleeping, it really, like, honestly, you have very few people in your ring corner. I don't, actually, I kind of regret using that analogy, because I think I try as much as possible to use like non-confrontational analogies. But that said, there's almost nobody on your side here. The Academy of Sleep Medicine, the NIH, the National Sleep Foundation, the ASA, they thrive on attention, just like bloggers and any type of media outlet, traditional media, radio station, you name it. They all need eyeballs. They all need attention. And without attention, they have nothing. Which, by the way, is true for me too. I try for everyone. If nobody gets, attention is what we all. Everybody's trying to accomplish something. We all need attention. But here's the thing. You know what gets attention the easiest? It is fear. Fear gets your attention the easiest. Or in this case, it is like what's the word for it? Is like it plays on this unfairness, It plays up that just kind of justice. It's injustice. It's not fair. Rich have everything, including good sleep. And in this article, they argue that rich can buy like nice homes in quiet neighborhoods that are total. I mean, sure, they can do that, but we know in this community that you can your room can be super dark, super cool. Like that's not how you get good sleep. It has nothing to do with it. But again, they're playing this up to get your attention, to make you upset and mad and angry and frustrated, etc. So that's where all this comes from. And I think it's a very sad state of affairs. Will it ever change? I hope it does. But again, like my hope is pinned on like the fact that information gets much more easily disseminated nowadays, and if eventually like people will know the truth. I hope so, but I don't know. But I want to thank you, Tracy. And by the way, there was this quick little thing I want to comment on here that I think may be helpful for you, Tracy, or anyone else that is tuning in. And that was this phrasing here, which said, I exercise daily and have a set wake up and bedtime. And that my spidey senses went off there, because that when I hear that in this context, it sounded to me as if like, I exercise daily and I have set wake up and bedtime. So, and even then I can't get much sleep. So it sounded to me there as if like the exercise and the set wake up and bedtime maybe was like an attempt at getting more sleep. And I think you know this, I'm sure you know this, Tracy, but just to mention, they're like sleep efforts, anything we do with that goal, intent, purpose, hope of getting more sleep always backfires. So always, if you exercise, do it for pleasure, never do it so that you can get more sleep. And generally, like being health conscious is a great thing, but it's one of those things that kind of backfires when it comes to sleep. So just want to sneak that one in there. Okay. So that said, let's see. We have a comment here from Christopher Nien. Hey, Christopher. Hope you're doing really good. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. Let's go back here and look at the next question here. Oh, yeah, this one. This is from Bonnie. And I may not read the whole thing. For anyone interested, you can like pause this video and you can read everything here. Let's just read it a little bit, and I've prepared an answer for this that we'll go over in a second. So let's start here. Bonnie says, "Dear Dr. Erson, just listened to your last podcast. Thank you for these. And I do believe that your main theory is spot on. The more you try to sleep, the harder it becomes, and reminding people that contrary to what most wellness advice says, lack of sleep is not dangerous, just annoying and inconvenient." 100%. Yeah, I thank you for this, Bonnie. Absolutely. That said, there are probably millions of us worldwide that have had major CNS damage due to years, sometimes much less, of use of benzodiazepines. Medical scientists are just finally doing the brain studies necessary. Withdrawal can be very dangerous, so your call for people to get off quickly would be unwise. It has been proven to be effective, and in fact can be extremely dangerous with benzos. Those of us who have been damaged know how painful these withdrawals can be, and sleep becomes the holy grail. So there's much more on this topic later on, but I just want to say a few things before I go to like the kind of answer I prepared here, which is that I think it's super important for me that everybody knows that what I talk about here is my general thoughts and general advice, and anyone out there with any concerns, questions, etc., talk to your doctor. My general thinking is that if somebody wants to get off a medication, then it has to be a decision, not a trial, because if you think of it as an experiment, that always fails. And I think generally that slow taper always leads to a moment where you have to come off if that's what you want to do. And I think generally a faster taper is better than a longer one, but everyone is different, and so it's important that you work with somebody that that you can communicate with, etc. Now, here's the thing. I wanted to it's very easy for me and for anybody else there that hears about the benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome to go into a state of trying to find evidence against that or for that and say, I think this is true, maybe it's not true, maybe it's not, etc. And I think that is very rarely helpful, because we can't really, anybody who's ever had a political discussion with somebody or something like that, it's very hard to change somebody's mind. And so he ends up just being like, not that helpful. But here's the thing. I think there is a way to still talk about this benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome in a way that it is helpful, and that is using the model, or the self-coaching model, which I'm such a huge proponent of. I learned it from Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School, and I have made a whole playlist on the model called The Model. It's in the description of all my recent videos. And briefly, it goes like this. So there are circumstances, those are things in life that we have no control over, including the past, what's happened to us in the past, or what people are thinking, people's behavior, or anything that just is a fact in the universe that we cannot control. That's a circumstance. Now, circumstances can give rise to thoughts, and we all know what a thought is. That's something we think, it's that this pen is blue. That's a thought. And the important thing with thoughts is that they do not represent the truth. They may or may not be true. They may represent actual reality or not, So those are thoughts. Now, here's an important part. That probably the heart of this model is that thoughts produce emotions. It often seems like emotions just come out of nowhere, but they are products of thoughts. And I think that can be that can be hard to swallow when you first think about really. But I believe that to be true, and a very, very, very short, what's that word? Concept, proof of concept is if I ask you to think about a little chubby baby with fat little cheeks that is cooing and smiling and giggling, that makes you feel good, And on the other hand, if you think about a grizzly bear charging at you like that makes you feel scared. And that's just proof of concept that thoughts produce emotions. Now, those emotions are there for a very practical reason. They're supposed to make us do something. In the case of the grizzly bear, we see the grizzly bear. That's the circumstance. We think, oh my God, I'm going to die. That makes us fearful. That's the emotion. And that fear triggers an action, which is either fight it. That's an action. An inaction, which is kind of like play dead, or a reaction, which is like heart like palpitations from the heart or something like that. And now the outcome, the result of that action, hopefully in the case of the grizzly bear, is that either you scare it off, or it doesn't become interested, or you hide or something like that. So that's kind of how the mind works in a nutshell, right? So what does this have to do with benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome? Well, here's the thing. With anything, you can use this model for anything you consider I want to work on this, or this is a problem for me. Then you just identify what that is in a phrase, and then you can plug it into the model. You can plug it as a circumstance, as a thought, as an emotion, action, inaction, reaction, or as a result. And when let's say our statement here is that benzodiazepine withdrawal is real, and it can cause a lot of trouble sleeping. Let's just say that, right? Then we can plug it in anywhere. Is it a result? No, that's not a result of something. Is it an action? That's not an action. Is it an emotion? It's not an emotion. Is it a thought? Maybe. Is it a circumstance? Maybe. Here's the thing. So you can plug this in as a thought or as a circumstance. And now, if you plug this in, if you say benzodiazepine withdrawal is a real thing and it can really mess up your sleep, then if you plug that in as a thought, then what you're saying is, this may or may not be true. This may or may not be true. And then the question becomes, okay, so how should I think about it? Should I accept this as truth, or should I try to refute it? And that depends on what results you want to get. And the results really, is a cascade of all these things. So let's say you think benzodiazepine withdrawal is real and it can really mess up my sleep. If you think that, how does it make you feel? If that makes you feel, let's say it makes you feel reassured, that you feel good about that. You feel like, okay, that's why I can't sleep. Now I don't have to wonder about it anymore. It feels good. That leads to inaction. It leads to you don't try to look for the reason anymore. You can become less preoccupied with sleep, etc. Then you'll probably get good results. You'll start sleeping better. On the flip side, so in that scenario, you don't have to work on it. That thought serves you, perfect. Now, on the flip side, if the thought benzodiazepine withdrawal is real and it causes a lot of sleep issues, if you think that and it makes you feel anxious, worried, preoccupied, stressed, then that will make you probably lead to an action like researching sleep, like reading up on it, trying to figure it out, reading more articles about benzodiazepines, etc. And that preoccupation will, emphasize the anxiety. And so these actions, preoccupying actions, are kind of an emphasizing of the emotion anxiety, and you will sleep less. So in this scenario, that thought is not serving you well. So you should try to change it. And this is if you've plugged in the statement there as a thought, okay? And now we have a final version here, which is we can plug in this as a circumstance. If you you're completely convinced that this is circumstance, it's irrefutable, it is fact. It is just as much fact as, this pen exists, right? Then here comes the thing. If you plug it in as a circumstance, that means you can do nothing about it. You can do absolutely nothing about it. So in that scenario, don't fight reality. You've plugged this in a circumstance. That means you should basically not try to do anything about it. Like, you should just leave it there. It's a circumstance. You can't do anything about it. Leave it there. And then the thought there becomes, okay, it's a circumstance. I can't do anything about that. That leads to, relief. Because when you plug it in a circumstance, relief happens. And you become you have actually more of inaction. You don't try to figure it out. You don't read about it. It's a circumstance. You can't do anything about it. And then the results you get are going to be better sleep. So that is, I think, a real good practical way of using a statement like this. So Bonnie, I'm super happy to hear your thoughts on this one, and anyone else for that matter as well. Cool. So let's keep going here, and let's see. Oh, wait a second. We have a live comment here, I believe, from Christopher Nian. Yeah. I commented on one of, let me share this one actually. I commented on one of your videos earlier this week about my sudden insomnia. I'm a competitive powerlifter, so I need good rest to perform well. This, however, increases my sleep anxiety. Help. It's so much insight here, Christopher. So much insight here. This is really, really exciting. Okay, so even from this short comment, we can learn so much. Christopher is a competitive powerlifter. When I hear that, my spidey senses go off, ding, 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 and I hear health conscious, and I hear type A personality. I hear high achiever, and all those traits, which are good traits, they do predispose someone to insomnia. So I'm not surprised at all that a health conscious, competitive type A person does have trouble sleeping. And the thing with that is like the things that are good in like normal life, being competitive, being driven, being like, goal oriented, etc. They don't work so well when it comes to sleep, because sleep is a passive process. It's like, it's when you don't try to sleep that you sleep really well. So when you apply that kind of to personality, like the kind of desire for control, or for, let's call it desire for control, that type of personality, if you will, and you try to control your sleep, you try to manage it, try to fix it, try to improve it, etc., then it becomes like a soap, like a slippery soap. It gets out of your hand. The more you try to grasp it, the more slippery it becomes. So now, Christopher, you're also saying here that it's particularly important for me to rest, to perform well, but this increases my sleep anxiety. And there you have it. That is it. That is it. Anything that makes you feel more pressured to sleep is going to make you have more trouble sleeping, guaranteed, 100%. So how should Christopher go about this? Like, it seems like, oh my gosh, he's stuck. But in fact, there is, in my opinion, only one to do this, and it is to challenge the thought. So I need good rest to perform well, because that thought is not serving you well. And like, you may say, but I hear all this information about that. You really need good sleep to rest, to perform, etc. And sure, it may be that if you sleep more, if you sleep like almost nothing, and if you sleep like a lot, that has impact. But guess what? You can do really well on little sleep also. We had somebody else on this channel, Brittany, that was many months ago, who did a full Ironman triathlon on literally after the least sleep she got in like, I think in her entire life, but she did it. And the reason I was so excited when she did that was that she proved to herself that even on minimal sleep, she could do it, which then makes her less afraid of having a sleepless night. She's like willing to have sleepless nights. She's okay with it. She can do well even with it, despite, sleeping very little, she can do okay. And that, I think, truly is the way you need to go, Christopher. I know it's super hard, but going into direction of saying, guess what? Even if I don't sleep that much, I can still do really well. I can do that. And you can look backwards and try to find evidence, like that time I didn't sleep much and I did well, or that time I slept pretty good, I still lost. That's evidence. Or you can just go forward and say, I'm going to find evidence. I'm going to be a detective. I'm going to look for evidence that even if I sleep little, I can still do really, really well. And when you move, and when you do that, the pressure to sleep goes down, sleep comes your way, and you'll do really, really well. Hope that makes sense, Christopher. And please stay in touch. Very cool. So let us move along here then to the next question. This is from, this is Gavin. And I didn't include your entire email, Gavin, because I think we talked a lot on the channel, but I want to still not say anything because I promised I would say something today. So let's read this. Hi, this is from Gavin. When I close my eyes, my mind starts thinking of random things, like normal things, but still can't fall asleep. Also, it feels so weird. I went to sleep 5 p.m. because I did an all-nighter and woke up at 7. Asked my sister if I slept. She said yes. Then I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden it was 9 and felt like I time traveled. And when you wrote this, Gavin, I immediately went into this document I'm working on, and I changed the word paradoxical insomnia to time traveling. I think it's so helpful to have these, this type of terminology. So I want to thank you for that, Gavin. And I want to say this is not unusual at all. Not unusual at all. When we are hyper aroused, when our minds are like really, really in that state of like looking out for trouble, oftentimes we don't notice sleep at all. It literally feels like you're awake for 2 hours or 4 hours. But when somebody tells you you're sleeping, you did. At least if you define sleep in that like kind of objective way, if you define sleep as an experience, well, then you didn't. But I hope this helps, Gavin. And I know I haven't seen so much comments in the last few days, which I think I take as a positive that you're hopefully less worried. But if not, just please stay in touch. Okay, so next question is from Eduardo. Let's read this. Hi, Daniel. My name is Eduardo. I'm from Colombia. Since December 2019, I've been in a quite complicated insomnia situation. I had 3 days with no sleep and stayed in the hospital for about 7 days. After some attempts with medicine, they sent me with 50 milligrams of trazodone and 3 milligrams of melatonin at night, in addition to a change in my lifestyle, exercise, food, and meditation. I have been sleeping excellent since then, but since a couple of days ago, I've slept very little. Could you recommend something for this situation, please? I must say that I'm very obsessive. And this morning, I woke up after a bad night to look for info on the internet, and I found about SFI, which scared me terribly. All right. I want to say, Eduardo, first of all, thank you for this this question. And let's go over this. So this story is not that uncommon, actually. We've had several people on this channel comment on how they were hospitalized, and often it was interpreted as like severe anxiety, or just like people didn't understand why you didn't sleep, and people were put on a lot of medications and eventually sent home. And this is a more more intense version of what happens so much outpatient when you're not hospitalized, which is the following: that somebody has trouble sleeping and eventually goes to see the doctor, and the doctor says, you got insomnia, take this medication. And when that happens, it's so problematic, because when somebody, particularly a doctor, says you have insomnia, it sounds like, oh, I was right. There's something wrong with me. Something is broken inside me. There's a problem within me. I have insomnia. And then you need to take this pill. That's like a confirmation that, yeah, I can't sleep on my own. I now need this thing to sleep. So what happens there is that you have, first, you identify yourself as having some kind of condition or some problem within you. And secondly, your sleep confidence, your ability, your belief in your own body's ability to make you sleep is diminished. So that's really problematic. And now when somebody's hospitalized like this, that becomes even more intense. So your sleep confidence, I think, can take an even bigger hit. And then when you're discharged on certain medications and some change in my lifestyle, then you have like sort of like propped up artificial confidence. You rely on these things like the medication plus my exercise, food, and meditation. That will make sure I sleep well. But the mind is not that easily convinced. It's still at some kind of subconsciously like, is this true? Like, am I going to sleep well, or what's going to happen? And then it actually just needs any little disturbance to, like, have you start sleeping a little again, and then your confidence like just comes down, because it was not real true confidence. It was externalized confidence. So that's in my interpretation of why this is common. And so what can I recommend for a situation like this? Well, I do believe it is education. It is education. It is learning, like, what is sleep? How is it regulated? Why do I have insomnia? And when you understand that, and when you're like, okay, got it, I understand why I have insomnia. There's nothing wrong with me. It's nothing strange. This is nothing unusual. The trouble sleeping I have is just like everybody else's on this channel, for example, or generally, like, it's just the same garden variety insomnia that everyone else has. Everybody's insomnia is like the circumstances are always different, but the basis of it is the same. It's always like, the more you try to sleep, the less you get. That Bonnie pointed out earlier. So when you understand that, then you're in a position where you can just like take a deep breath and be like, okay, I'm going to start getting up about the same time every morning. I'm not going to chase sleep. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to sleep. I'm going to give myself maybe a 7-hour or 8-hour opportunity to sleep, not more. I'm not going to chase sleep, and I'm going to enjoy my life and those type of things. So this is very, very brief, but basically I say, learn, educate yourself, and you'll do really well. And Eduardo, just like, if you have like questions I'm thinking you will, I think you should browse the videos here and learn. And as you do, if you have any comments, questions, problems, concerns, just let me know. So yeah, hang in there, Eduardo. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to another email from Thea, and came in a couple of days ago. Hi, Daniel. Sorry for the delayed response, but I really didn't want to think about insomnia since the days after I wrote that email and watched the video you uploaded. I slept really well for a few days. Glad to hear that. My insomnia, what did I do? I hit the wrong button. Sorry, I went up. I went too far up, and that was Eduardo. And here we go. Oh yeah. My insomnia episodes really always went like this. Once they started, a few days, I'll have a lot of troubles, and then I'll regain confidence after sleeping well and will sleep good for some nights, over and over. But now I'm having trouble again. First of all, I wanted to say something about what Coach Michael said about what goes on in my brain when I try to fall asleep. All the scenarios and thoughts, I actually do not control them. I have always had this issue all my life. It's just how my brain works. When I'm calm and manage a normal sleep pattern, they just eventually transform into dreams, and the next morning I can sometimes remember them. But they get worse as I get more anxious and sleep deprived. So you see, I can't really just get out of bed when I have them. They are part of my process of falling asleep, but can also very much fuel my insomnia if I pay too much attention to them. And when I'm anxious, I pay too much attention to everything. Have any of the people who talked to you spoken about seeing weird, elaborated scenarios or thoughts when they are in the process of falling asleep? An answer to this question would really help me. I'll answer that one right away and say, yes, this is not uncommon. Some people describe like an out-of-body experience. Having like bizarre thoughts is very, very common. Like just like some people, racing thoughts is a common one. Random thoughts, strange thoughts, very, very common. In fact, there's so many odd seeming things that happen just as you're about to fall asleep, like that hypnic awareness. You can just become aware of falling asleep, or you have a jerk, or you hear something, or you see something that you realize isn't true. Like even like hallucinations as you're about to transition to sleep are not that uncommon. So yeah, let's go on. Now about the new problems. A few days ago, I spent a night out and obviously I couldn't sleep, and I got very few hours of sleep the next days also. I'm writing this at night. I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight either. My brain is just always active. I feel like I'm always awake, even though I know I managed to sleep something the last few days. When I spend a night up, I am usually very aware of it. Well, during these few episodes of paradoxical insomnia, I feel like I went unconscious for some time. The route is always the same. I see all my scenarios, so it almost feels like I'm dreaming. But I never transition into sleep. I'm still conscious, and after a while, it becomes unbearable, and my brain is so awake while my eyes are crying for sleep. Really, I think the only thing that tells me I'm sleep deprived are my eyes most of the times. Otherwise, I'm kind of fine. Question. If I slept very few hours in days, is it normal? This is very common, actually. It is, I call these hyper events when you have this like hyper sleep, which is like hyper aroused sleep, where you have paradoxical insomnia, for example, vivid dreams. It feels like you can hear everything that's going on. You're aware of your surroundings all night. That's hyper sleep. And you can be hyper charged during the day, whereby it's kind of baffling, where like, I only slept like 2 hours and still have this energy. This is weird, but it's actually very, very common. I'm not even worrying too much this time, but my heart rate spikes up and muscles tense up, even though I don't think I'm anxious. That's, again, hyper events, when you have like jerks, tingling, tensions, etc., that are, because of the hyperarousal itself, it's in this state of like anticipation. We kind of make ourselves tense, and also it's the awareness that you pay attention to things that you otherwise wouldn't. These are all very common hyper events, hyperarousal events. And this may worsen the hyperarousal. There you have it. You're onto it. You're onto it, Thea. Anyway, these are still my concerns. What are these scenarios I see before bed? Is there something wrong in my brain activity? And I am so worried I'm going to die or damage my brain for the lack of the rest. But sometimes it's just too hard to stay in bed, and I end up not sleeping at all. Relating to people is very important for me. In fact, one of the things that scares me the most is being alone. And right now, you're very much the only person I can talk to about this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know my emails are so long, and I'm so sorry, but I've never heard about people having these scenarios, so I wanted to explain it as best as I could. I'll be waiting your response. Thank you, really. This is the worst thing I've ever got to experience in my 20 years of life, Thea. Sorry to hear this, Thea. I really do, and it's one of those emails that where you can really sense it, sense that there's a lot, like trouble sleeping has had a big impact. And I think, if you would go through all the emails that I've gotten, that I've read here on the channel, you would find all of what you describe in another comment. Maybe not the exact words, but if you listen to what other people report, and by the way, if anybody out there has experience with Thea has, please share. But I think there's nothing unusual or strange about this that I haven't heard before many times. And I think, something that I want to point out where we heard a couple times was I managed to get sleep. That's one of the things that triggers my spidey senses. And whenever you think of sleep as something that is an active process, you're kind of managing, you're trying to get it, you were able to get it. I succeeded in getting it, I was lucky to get it, something like that. Then it's like, then that will not work in your favor. Whenever you try to sleep, you you have less of it. So whenever you think of it like I managed to sleep, that that is kind of a clue that you're thinking of sleep as an active process. And it's only when you let go of that, then you'll start sleeping better. And that, I believe, is really important, because you wrote here, but since the days after I wrote that email to you and watched the video you uploaded, I slept really well for a few days. Why was that? Well, there's nothing mysterious about that. It's because you were less worried and you were trying less to sleep and you were letting go and you slept better. And again, like I said earlier in this episode, when you do that, when you're kind of like, you're not so worried, you're letting go, you're okay with it. Actually, what you are doing is like, you're more willing to have insomnia. You're not fighting it. You're not resisting it. You're like, and that is the key. That's the key to this whole thing. Like, the more you're like, if I don't sleep much, that's okay. If you can go in that direction, finding evidence that you can do well, even if you don't sleep that much, reward yourself if you don't sleep much, spoil yourself if you don't sleep much, like teach your brain that sleeping little is okay, that you'll be fine if you don't sleep, even if you sleep a little. When you are willing to have insomnia, you sleep really, really well. I know it's super hard, but that is the clue. And whether you stay in bed or not, it doesn't really matter. I think it is really important to try to make wakefulness your friend. And when you're awake at night, not fight it, not try to make yourself sleep or resist it or try to avoid it, etc., but do things that brings you joy, and like teach your brain that wakefulness is okay. Then it will be more willing to have wakefulness, which is another way of saying it will be less fear of being awake at night, and you'll sleep much better. And yeah, I think we'll end there for now, Thea. But like follow-up questions, please let me know. Hang in there with Thea. You'll do really well. And then that was it, actually. That was the last one. So so here's some live comments here. Let's take this out. And Christopher said, here, it's hard, but I'll try. Thank you. The weird thing is that my sudden insomnia was the result of just one night of bad sleep, which snowballed. I've heard that one before. And, that could be for many reasons. But again, it could be this combination of like you have one night where you slept very little, and then you have this, personality is never a problem. We all have a personality, and everybody, no matter what personality you have, you can sleep really well. But if you have like that personality of like being health conscious and typically have control over things, you're competitive, etc., then one night can be like the only night when it could be just like one night where you're like, whoa, that was weird. I got to do something about my sleep. I hope it doesn't happen again. Boom, it snowballs after that. So that could definitely, I'm not surprised at all by that one. And I never had trouble sleeping 2 weeks ago, which is odd also. If this all started like 2 weeks ago, then I think you're actually in a very good spot, because then you can just be like, nothing is wrong with me. Like, you can, nothing is wrong with anyone, but you can easily see that, you don't have to go into the whole of like, you haven't done it yet. You haven't gone to like, something's wrong with me. I've tried all the medications. I've tried all supplements, like all these beliefs and habits and things that really you need to work on when you have trouble sleeping for a while. You can skip that whole part and just be like, okay, this is not unusual. I'm going to do whatever I did 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to forget about this whole thing. And you'll do well soon, Christopher. Thanks for the thumbs up, Lydel. And thanks. It was a while since we chatted, but thanks. It's so cool to have you back here, Lydel. Lydel says, oh, that thing where you seems like you're dreaming but feel so awake. I have that too. Check that out. Thea, Lydel has that too. And Lydel says, I know how that feels like, and you are not alone. That's a perfect way to end this live here. Lydel says, you are not alone. Nobody's alone. This is so important. All right, I want to thank everyone that sent that commented, that sent questions, and we're here live, etc. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow, and until then,